mysterious and terrifying world of space. Agent Best Iko lands on the planet Shumara for his mission, but he encounters deadly conspiracies and betrayal. His journey begins with an eerie silence as his shuttle is ambushed in a neon-lit city. Running through dense alleys filled with flickering holograms, he discovers a bloodstained note held by a dead Shumarian agent that reads, "Welcome, Akeo. Run." This moment changes his life, for now. He is no longer the hunter, but the hunted. Darkness closes in around him, and hurried footsteps mark the beginning of his terrifying journey. The rain fell in sheets against the reinforced glass of the Human Intelligence Directorate headquarters, each drop a tiny explosion against the transparent armor that protected Earth's most clandestine agency from prying eyes. Inside, Director Marcus Thorne stood before the holographic display, his withered face illuminated by the blue-white glow of the star chart that rotated silently in the center of the room. "The signal is unlike anything we've encountered before," Thorne said, his voice low and gravelly from years of field work before he'd been promoted to a desk job. "Originating from the Shumara system, but it's not Shumarian in nature. It's something else entirely. Something that could threaten everything we've built." Best Iko stood at attention, his posture perfect despite the exhaustion that gnawed at his edges. 6 months of continuous operations had left their mark, but his eyes remained sharp, missing nothing. At 35, he was already a legend within the HID, the agent who single-handedly prevented the Cygnus incident from escalating into an interstellar war, the man who walked out of the cave or breeding pits with the ambassador's daughter and half their scientific research. "What kind of threat?" Iko asked, his voice measured. He learned long ago that emotion was a luxury field agents couldn't afford. Thorne swiped his hand through the hologram, replacing the star chart with a series of waveforms and spectrographic analyses. "We don't know. That's the problem. But whatever it is, it's broadcasting on frequencies that shouldn't exist, using encryption that breaks every algorithm we throw at it. And it's getting stronger." Iko studied the data, his mind processing the information with the speed that had made him HID's top operative. "You want me to go to Shumara Prime?" "Not want. Need," Thorne corrected, turning to face Iko fully. The director's eyes held the weight of worlds, the burden of decisions that could save or doom billions. "The Shumarians want to cooperate. They haven't responded to any of our diplomatic channels. We need eyes on the ground, someone who can move unseen, gather intelligence, and neutralize the threat if necessary. And if it's not neutralizable..." Thorne's expression hardened. "Then you make it neutralizable. That's why we're sending you and not a platoon of Marines." Iko nodded slowly. "What's my cover?" "None," Thorne said simply. "This is off the books. If you're caught, HID will disavow any knowledge of your existence. You'll be declared rogue, a traitor acting against Earth's interests." "Standard procedure then," Iko replied with a ghost of a smile. "When do I leave?" 2 hours. Your ship is being prepped now. The Vigilant Wraith has been modified with the latest stealth technology and a few experimental toys from our RD division." Thorne stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Iko, there's something else. The signal. It contains patterns. Not just random noise. There are elements of human communication buried within it. Distorted, almost unrecognizable, but there." Iko's eyes narrowed. "Human patterns. On an alien world." "Exactly. That's why this mission is critical. We need to know what's happening out there before it finds its way back to Earth." Commander Arcturus Hale entered the briefing room, his presence immediately commanding attention. Tall and imposing, with silver-streaked black hair and eyes that seemed to pierce through any facade, Hale had been Iko's mentor for 15 years. He recruited Iko into HID, trained him, and saved his life more times than either could count. "Iko," Hale said with a rare smile. "Heard you drew the short straw again." "Someone has to keep the universe safe for democracy," Iko replied, turning to face his mentor. "What brings you here, Commander?" "I thought you were overseeing the Europa Station upgrades." "Finished ahead of schedule," Hale said, joining them at the holographic display.
Thorn called me in as a consultant on this one. I have some experience with the Shumarians. Thorn nodded. Hale led the first contact mission 12 years ago. The only human to ever spend extended time on Shumara Prime and return in one piece. Their society is built on layers of deception, Hale explained, his expression growing serious. What you see is never what you get. Trust no one, question everything. The Shumarians value information above all else, and they do anything to acquire it. Sounds like my kind of people, Iko said dryly. Hale placed a hand on Iko's shoulder, his grip firm. Be careful out there. The Shumarians aren't like other species we've encountered. They don't just kill their enemies, they erase them. From existence, from memory, from history itself. I'll keep that in mind, Iko promised, already mentally cataloging the equipment he'd need for the mission. Anything else I should know before I depart? Thorn and Hale exchanged a look that Iko couldn't quite interpret. Something unsaid passed between them, a conversation held in glances rather than words. Just this, Hale said finally. The Shumarians have a legend about a shadow that walks between worlds. A being that cannot be killed, only contained. They call it the Void Stalker. If you encounter anything that matches that description, retreat immediately. Your life is more valuable than any intelligence you might gather. A legend. Iko raised an eyebrow. I'm more concerned with real threats, Commander. Sometimes the legends are true, Hale replied cryptically. Sometimes they're warnings. 2 hours later, Iko stood in the hangar bay, staring up at the vigilant wraith. The ship was a masterpiece of engineering, sleek, dark, and shaped like a predatory bird of prey. Its hull absorbed light rather than reflecting it, making it difficult to focus on for more than a few seconds at a time. His equipment was already aboard, a stealth coat that could adapt to any environment, a plasma pistol with 3 power settings, a neural scrambler, and a Morph field refractor that would temporarily alter his appearance to blend in with the local population. The refractor was experimental and unstable, but it was his best chance of moving through Shumarian society without immediate detection. As he made his final checks, Commander Hale approached, carrying a small metallic case. A little something from me to you, Hale said, handing the case to Iko. Just in case you run into trouble. Iko opened the case. Inside lay a combat knife with a blade that seemed to drink the light around it. The handle was wrapped in a material that felt both familiar and alien. Vibranium edged, Hale explained. Cuts through anything. The handle contains a locator beacon keyed only to my frequency. If you need extraction, activate it, and I'll come for you. No questions asked. Iko looked up at his mentor, surprised by the offer. Off-book missions didn't typically come with extraction plans. Thank you, Commander. Just come back in one piece, Hale said, his voice softening slightly. Earth needs you. I need you to come back. Iko nodded, securing the knife in its sheath at his belt. I always do. As he boarded the vigilant wraith, Iko couldn't shake the feeling that there was something his commander and the director weren't telling him. The exchanged glances, the unusual offer of extraction, the cryptic warnings about Shumarian legends, it all pointed to a mission far more dangerous than they were letting on. But he was best Iko. He defaced worse odds and survived. He would complete this mission, whatever the true nature of the threat, and return to Earth with the intelligence HID needed to protect humanity from whatever lurked in the shadows of Shumara Prime. The ship's hatch sealed with a soft hiss, the engines humming to life with barely a whisper. Through the cockpit viewport, Earth hung like a blue marble in the darkness of space, beautiful, fragile, worth any sacrifice to protect. As the vigilant wraith lifted off, disappearing into the rain-swept night, Iko had no way of knowing that this mission would test not just his skills and training, but his very understanding of loyalty, betrayal, and what it meant to be human in a universe that viewed his species as little more than an evolutionary curiosity. He also couldn't know that the greatest threat to his mission wasn't waiting for him on Shumara Prime, but had already infiltrated the one place he considered safe, the Human Intelligence Directorate itself. The transition from faster-than-light travel to normal space always left Aiko with a moment of disorientation, as if the universe had briefly forgotten how to process his existence before remembering him again. The vigilant wraith emerged from the quantum tunnel with the same silent grace it had entered it, its hull still absorbing the ambient light of the Shumara system. Shumara Prime filled the forward viewport a world of stark contrasts and impossible geometry. The planet's surface swirled with shades of violet and deep indigo, punctuated by flashes of neon light that indicated massive cities. Most striking were the crystalline structures that rose from the planet's surface like frozen lightning, their facets catching the light of the system's binary suns and refracting it into a rainbow of colors. Approaching designated coordinates, the ship's AI announced in its calm, synthesized voice. Atmospheric composition, nitrogen-oxygen mix with trace elements of xenon and krypton. Gravity, 1, 2 Earth standard. Atmospheric pressure within safe parameters for human exposure. Run stealth protocols, Aiko commanded, his fingers dancing across the control panel. I want to be a ghost in their system. Stealth protocols engaged. Emissions masked. Radar cross-section minimized. Probability of detection, 0.013%. Aiko guided the wraith through the upper atmosphere, the ship's hull shimmering as it adapted to the changing conditions. Below, the cityscape resolved into a dizzying network of floating platforms connected by bridges of light, with streams of vehicles moving between levels in orchestrated chaos. Locate a suitable landing zone away from population centers, Aiko instructed. Somewhere I can approach the city without drawing attention. Scanning. Optimal location identified, abandoned industrial sector 7. 3 kilometers from the city center. Structures appear to have been dormant for approximately 17. 4 Earth years. Set her down there. The wraith descended through the thickening atmosphere, its stealth systems preventing any detection by the planetary defense network. Aiko watched the landscape grow closer, the alien architecture becoming more detailed and bizarre with each passing moment. Buildings curved in ways that defied conventional engineering, their surfaces covered in patterns that seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles. The ship touched down with barely a whisper, its landing gear extending just enough to settle the vessel on the glass-like ground without disturbing the fine layer of blue dust that covered everything. Outside, the air shimmered with heat distortion, though the ambient temperature read as a comfortable 22 degrees Celsius. Environment stable, the AI reported. Atmospheric filters online. You may disembark when ready. Aiko moved to the equipment locker, donning his stealth coat and checking the charge on his plasma pistol. The Morph field refractor felt cool against his skin as he attached it to his belt, its small indicator light glowing a steady green. He took a moment to center himself, accessing the mental techniques that had kept him alive in situations far more dire than this. Remember the briefing, he murmured to himself. Trust no one. Question everything. The Shumarians value information above all else. With a final check of his gear, Aiko approached the hatch. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing the alien landscape in all its strange beauty. The air that filled the ship carried the scent of ozone and something else, something metallic and sweet, like rain on hot metal. He stepped out of the wraith, his boots making no sound on the glassy ground. The blue dust swirled around his ankles, fine as smoke and just as ephemeral. Above, the sky was a deep purple, streaked with clouds that glowed from within, as if containing their own light source. The immediate area was littered with the husks of industrial machinery, their forms twisted and corroded by whatever processes had once occurred here. Crystalline structures grew from the metal like tumors, their facets catching the light in ways that hurt the eyes. Aiko activated his tactical display, the information appearing as a transparent overlay in his field of vision. Scan for life signs, he whispered into his communicator. Scanning. Multiple life forms detected within a 2-kilometer radius. Predominantly Shumarian. One human signature detected approximately 500 meters to the northeast. Aiko froze. Human signature. Confirm. Confirmed. Biometric patterns match human DNA with 98.7% certainty. Life signs are faint but present. That was impossible. He was supposed to be the only human on this planet. His intelligence had been clear. No human had ever set foot on Shumara Prime since Hale's first contact mission, and even that had been restricted to the diplomatic zone. Keep scanning, Iko commanded, his hand moving to his plasma pistol. Any other anomalies? Energy fluctuations detected in the vicinity of the human life sign. Unusual radiation patterns consistent with experimental technology. Also detecting multiple surveillance drones operating on restricted frequencies. Someone knew he was here. Someone had been waiting for him. Iko moved cautiously toward the human signature, his stealth code adapting to the changing light as he navigated the maze of abandoned machinery. The blue dust rose in small clouds with each step, settling slowly back to the ground. As he rounded a massive crystalline formation, he saw it, a body-lying face. Down on the glassy ground, dressed in what appeared to be a Shumarian security uniform. Iko approached slowly, his weapon ready, scanning the area for any sign of an ambush. The body was indeed Shumarian, tall and slender with the characteristic metallic violet skin tone. But as Iko rolled it over, he saw the cause of death, a plasma bolt burned straight through the throat, precise and lethal. In the creature's hand was a small slip of paper, Earth technology so out of place it might as well have been a flaming sword. Iko unfolded the note, his heart rate accelerating. The message was written in English, the handwriting hurried but clear. Welcome, AIKO. Run. Before he could process the implications, the air around him filled with the high-pitched whine of approaching drones. 3 of them, sleek and predatory, their multifaceted eyes glowing with an eerie blue light. They moved with impossible speed, changing direction in mid-air without slowing. Iko didn't hesitate. He dropped to the ground as the first drone opened fire, high-frequency sonic rounds passing through the space where his head had been moments before. The rounds didn't make a sound as they traveled, but their impact on nearby machinery was devastating metal that didn't dent but simply ceased to exist, as if erased from reality. His stealth code activated, its surfaces shifting to match the darkness beneath a piece of equipment. The drones paused, their sensors searching for their target. Iko held his breath, counting the seconds until their search patterns would bring them close enough for him to act. As one drone passed overhead, Iko launched himself from his hiding position, his hand closing around its metallic body. The machine struggled, its propellers whining as it tried to break free. With a grunt of effort, Iko swung it like a flail, smashing it into the second drone. Electric arcs erupted between the two machines, bathing the area in blue light before both crashed to the ground in a shower of sparks. The third drone retreated to a safe distance, its weapon charging for another shot. Iko didn't give it the chance. He drew his plasma pistol, set it to maximum power, and fired. The bolt of superheated energy struck the drone dead center, reducing it to molten slag in an instant. Silence descended once more, broken only by the crackle of cooling electronics. Iko stood panting, his adrenaline surging. Someone had known he was coming. Someone had set a trap. He turned his attention back to the dead Shumarian, noting the rank insignia on its uniform, Shumarian Security Bureau, rank 7 covert agent. No one killed an agent of that rank and left them in plain view unless they wanted to send a message. Iko scanned the area again, this time more carefully. Any other threats? He asked his ship SAI. Negative immediate threats detected. However, I am detecting increased surveillance activity across the sector. It appears your presence has been noted. Noted, Iko muttered, examining the dead agent's equipment. Most of it was standard Shumarian tech, but one item caught his attention, a data chip tucked into a hidden compartment in the agent's boot. He pocketed it quickly, knowing he'd need to find a secure location to access its contents. As he stood up, something in the reflection of a nearby piece of machinery caught his eye. A tall figure, skeletal in build, with gray-violet skin and eyes that glowed with cyan light. It moved with impossible grace, its form seeming to shift between solid and transparent as it approached. Iko spun around, plasma pistol raised, but the figure was gone. He scanned the area, his heart pounding, but found no sign of the mysterious observer. Had it been real? Or a trick of the strange light on this alien world? Scan for life forms in immediate vicinity, Aiko commanded, his voice tight. Scanning. One life form detected. Shumarian. Approximately 50 meters to your west. Moving away at high speed. Aiko took off after the figure, his boots barely making a sound on the glassy ground. The Shumarian moved with unnatural speed, its long legs covering ground with impossible efficiency. Aiko pushed himself harder, his training taking over as he calculated intercept trajectories and possible ambush points. The chase led him through the abandoned industrial complex, past machinery that seemed to pulse with residual energy. The blue dust swirled in their wake, creating a temporary trail that Aiko followed even when his target momentarily disappeared behind obstacles. As they neared the edge of the industrial zone, the Shumarian suddenly stopped, turning to face Aiko with those glowing cyan eyes. It raised a hand, and Aiko felt a pressure in his mind, the beginning of a psionic attack. He immediately activated his neural scrambler, the device sending out a counter-frequency that disrupted the psychic assault. The Shumarian staggered, momentarily disoriented. Aiko used the opportunity to close the distance between them, raising his plasma pistol for a clear shot. But before he could fire, the figure spoke, its voice resonating directly in Aiko's mind rather than through the air. Earthling arrived. Kill order remains. The figure then dissolved into a cloud of blue dust, which quickly dispersed in the slight breeze. Aiko stood alone in the alien landscape, his mind reeling from the psychic contact and the implications of the message. Kill order. From whom? And why had the figure simply disappeared instead of continuing the fight? AI, Aiko said into his communicator, analyzed the psychic signature. Cross-reference with known Shumarian operatives. Analyzing. Match found with 94.3% certainty. Shumarian elite operative designated Veyrax. Known alias, the Lazarus Cutter. Specializes in enhanced interrogation techniques. Reputation for reviving targets after death to extract information. Aiko felt a chill run down his spine despite the warm air. The Lazarus Cutter was a legend among intelligence agents, a bogeyman used to scare new recruits. If Veyrax was here, then the threat was far greater than he'd been led to believe. He made his way back to the Vigilant Wraith, his mind racing with questions. Who had left the warning note? Who had killed the Shumarian agent? And why was there a human life sign in this area when he was supposed to be the only human on the planet? As he approached the ship, he noticed something that hadn't been there before, a small object resting on the ramp leading to the hatch. It was a data chip, identical to the one he'd taken from the dead agent, but this one was marked with a symbol he recognized immediately, the insignia of the Human Intelligence Directorate. His blood ran cold. Someone from Earth was here. Someone who had access to HID technology. Someone who had known he was coming and had left him a message. Aiko picked up the chip, his fingers trembling slightly. This changed everything. His mission was compromised before it had even begun. The question was no longer just what was happening on Shumara Prime, but who from his own organization was involved. The interior of the Vigilant Wraith felt like a sanctuary after the alien landscape outside, though Aiko knew better than to let his guard down. He secured the hatch and moved to the ship's analysis terminal, his mind still processing the implications of the discovery. Run full diagnostic on all systems, he commanded the AI. Check for any unauthorized access, tracking devices, or modifications. Diagnostic initiated. Estimated completion time, 12 minutes. While the ship ran its checks, Aiko inserted the first data chip, the one taken from the dead Shumarian agent, into the Terminal S reader. The encryption was complex, a layered system that would have taken standard HID weeks to crack. Fortunately, the Wraith-S quantum processor was anything but standard. Encryption compromised, the AI announced after 47 seconds. Accessing data files. A series of images and documents filled the screen. Most were routine reports, surveillance logs, patrol schedules, intelligence assessments. But buried deep in the files was something else, a series of video files, each marked with the same cryptic symbol that had appeared on the warning note. He played the first file. The video showed a human figure in what appeared to be a Shumarian interrogation chamber. The figure was strapped to a chair that seemed to be made of living tissue, its surface pulsing with a faint blue light. Around the figure stood several Shumarians, their forms partially obscured by the poor lighting. The human was speaking, though the audio was distorted almost beyond recognition. Aiko enhanced the sound, filtering out the interference until words began to emerge. "Don't understand what you want from me," the human was saying, his voice strained with pain and exhaustion. "I'm just a researcher. I don't have access to classified information." One of the Shumarians stepped forward, its form resolving into the distinctive silhouette of Veyrax. "You misunderstand the nature of our inquiry," the Shumarian communicated, its voice a direct mental transmission that the recording equipment had somehow captured. "We are not interested in what you know. We are interested in what you are." The human struggled against his restraints, his face contorted in fear. "I don't know what that means." "It means," Veyrax continued, "that humanity represents an anomaly in the evolutionary progression of sentient species. Your capacity for both creation and destruction, your emotional volatility, your inexplicable willingness to sacrifice for others, these traits should have been selected against generations ago. Yet they persist. Why?" The video ended abruptly, replaced by static. Aiko played the next file, which showed the same human subject at a later point in the interrogation. His condition had deteriorated significantly. His skin was pale, his eyes sunken, but there was a defiance in his expression that hadn't been present before. "You can study me all you want," the human was saying, his voice stronger now despite his physical state. "But you'll never understand what makes us human. Because it's not something you can measure or quantify. It's something you choose." "Choice is an illusion," Veyrax responded, its mental voice cold and analytical. "All behavior is the product of genetic programming and environmental conditioning. What you call choice is merely the predictable outcome of biological and social factors." The human laughed, a harsh sound that devolved into coughing. "Then explain this. I'm choosing to die rather than help you. How does your genetic programming account for that?" The video cut off again, but not before Aiko caught a glimpse of something important: a tattoo on the human's forearm. A symbol he recognized immediately, the insignia of HID's Deep Space Research Division. "Enhance the tattoo," Aiko commanded. "Cross-reference with personnel records." The AI processed the request in seconds. Match found. Dr. Elias Chen, assigned to Project Chimera. Status: MIA in action 18 months ago during exploration of uncharted Sector 7. Aiko felt his stomach clench. Project Chimera was one of HID's most classified initiatives, a study of human evolutionary potential under extreme conditions. If the Shumarians had gotten their hands on Chen and his research, they might have access to information that could compromise all of HID's operations. He played the remaining video files, each showing further progression of the interrogation. Chen's condition worsened, but his defiance never wavered. In the final file, recorded just days before his apparent death, Chen looked directly at the camera, as if knowing Aiko would eventually see this recording. "They're afraid of us," Chen said, his voice barely a whisper. "Not of what we are now, but of what we might become. That's why they're studying us, trying to understand our potential. But they can't. Because the one thing they can't measure is hope." The video ended with Chen convulsing, his body arching against the restraints as some kind of energy surged through him. The last image was of his face, eyes wide with what looked like surprise rather than pain. Aiko sat back, his mind reeling from what he'd just seen. The Shumarians weren't just studying humans, they were afraid of them. And if they were afraid, they would do anything to contain what they saw as a threat. "Diagnostic complete," the AI announced, interrupting his thoughts. "All systems operational. No unauthorized access detected." However, long-range sensors have identified a tracking device embedded in the ship's hull. Frequency matches Shumarian military specifications. Iko swore under his breath. They de-tagged him the moment he de-entered the system. His arrival had never been a secret. "Remove the tracker," he commanded. Then analyze the second data chip. Tracker removal initiated. Estimated time, 3 minutes. Insert second chip for analysis. Iko complied, inserting the chip he found on the ship's ramp. This one was encrypted differently, not with Shumarian algorithms but with HID's latest quantum encryption, which shouldn't have been possible outside of Earth's secure facilities. Encryption compromised, the AI announced after 23 seconds. Accessing data files. The chip contained only one file, a video message that began playing immediately. Iko recognized the face that appeared on screen with a shock that went straight to his core commander Arcturus Hale, his mentor, his friend, the man who'd given him the vibranium-edged knife now secured at his belt. "Iko," Hale began, his expression grave. "If you're watching this, it means I'm dead and you've discovered the truth about what's happening on Shumara Prime. There's no easy way to say this, so I'll be direct. I betrayed you. I betrayed HID. I betrayed Earth." Iko felt as if the floor had dropped out from under him. He gripped the edge of the console, his knuckles white, as Hale continued. "The Shumarians approached me 3 years ago with an offer I couldn't refuse. Not power or wealth, but something far more tempting, the secret to extending human consciousness beyond the death of the body. A form of digital immortality that would preserve everything I am, everything I've learned, forever." Hale's image looked away, as if ashamed. "In exchange, I agreed to provide them with access to HID's most sensitive projects and personnel. I fed them information about our agents, our technology, our strategies. I arranged for certain operatives to be sent on missions from which they would never return." Iko's blood ran cold. How many agents had died because of Hale's betrayal? How many missions had been compromised? "I know what you're thinking," Hale continued, his eyes meeting Iko's through the recording. "How could I do this? How could I betray everything I claimed to stand for?" The answer is simple: fear. Not of death, but of irrelevance. Of being forgotten. The Shumarians offered me a form of permanence that no human has ever achieved. Hale leaned closer to the camera, his expression urgent. "But I made a mistake. I underestimated them. The Shumarians don't want to preserve human consciousness, they want to study it, dissect it, understand it so they can neutralize the threat they believe we represent. They're not interested in partnership, they're interested in containment." Iko watched, mesmerized, as Hale's confession continued. "I tried to back out, but it was too late. They'd already integrated too much of my consciousness into their systems. I became a prisoner in my own ambition. But I found a way to leave you a warning, a path to the truth. The dead agent, the human life sign, the data chips all arranged by me before they fully integrated my neural patterns." Hale's image began to flicker, as if losing connection. "There is something else you need to know, Iko. Something about Project Chimera. Chin wasn't just studying human potential under extreme conditions, he was developing a way to unlock latent abilities in certain individuals. Abilities that would make those individuals unpredictable, dangerous to anyone who tried to control them." The recording deteriorated further, Hale's voice breaking up. "The Shumarians have the research. They're trying to replicate it, to create a countermeasure. But they're missing something crucial, something only Chin understood. Find it, Iko. Find it before they succeed." The final image of Hale showed his eyes wide with terror as something moved behind him in the recording. "They're here. Remember what I taught you. Trust your instincts, not your orders. The enemy isn't always who you think it is." The recording ended, leaving Iko alone with his thoughts. Everything he thought he knew about his mission, about his mentor, about the threat facing Earth, it was all wrong. Hale hadn't just betrayed HID, he tried to warn Iko about the true nature of the danger. "Tracker removed," the AI announced, breaking the silence. Shall I plot a course back to Earth? Aiko considered it. His mission parameters had changed completely. He was no longer just gathering intelligence on an unknown signal, he was unraveling a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of HID, a conspiracy that involved alien technology, human evolution, and a threat that could redefine humanity's place in the universe. No, Aiko said finally, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his mind. Plot a course to the city center. We have work to do. The city of Xylos, capital of Shumara Prime, defied conventional architecture and physics in equal measure. Buildings curved in impossible spirals, their surfaces covered in patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. Streets of light connected floating platforms at various levels, with streams of vehicles moving between them in orchestrated chaos. Above it all, the sky glowed with a perpetual twilight, the binary suns casting long shadows that seemed to move independently of their sources. Aiko moved through the lower levels of the city, his morph field refractor activated at minimal power. The device strained to adapt his human physiology to mimic the Shumarian appearance, generating a faint violet tint to his skin and altering the subtle biosignals that Shumarians used to identify each other. It wasn't perfect, he could feel the energy leakage as a low-grade headache, but it was enough to pass casual observation. The streets teemed with life, most of it Shumarian but with representatives from at least a dozen other species Aiko recognized from HID's databases. Traders haggled in multiple languages, their voices overlapping in a cacophony that somehow harmonized rather than clashed. Food vendors sold items that defied classification, some floating in stasis fields, others writhing as if still alive. Above it all, holographic advertisements flickered and changed, targeting potential customers with subliminal messages tailored to their species' psychological profiles. Aiko kept to the shadows, his stealth code adapting to the changing light as he navigated the maze of streets and alleys. His destination was a location mentioned in the data files from the dead agent, a bar called the Whispering Void, known as a meeting place for information brokers of all species. As he approached, he noted the establishment's unusual design. The entrance appeared to be a shimmering curtain of light that rippled when disturbed. Above the doorway, a sign in multiple languages announced the bar's name, though the Shumarian characters seemed to shift and change when Aiko tried to focus on them. He took a deep breath and stepped through the light curtain, expecting some kind of security scan or barrier. Instead, he found himself in a space that seemed larger than the building's exterior dimensions should allow. The ceiling stretched upward into darkness, with floating platforms at various levels providing seating for patrons. The lighting was dim, coming from bioluminescent organisms embedded in the walls and ceiling. The clientele was as diverse as the city outside, Shumarians in various styles of dress, insectoid beings from the cave or hive worlds, silicon-based lifeforms that communicated through light patterns, and even a few species Aiko didn't recognize. What they all had in common was a certain wariness, a constant awareness of their surroundings that spoke to lives lived in the shadows. Aiko approached the bar, taking his seat on one of the stools that seemed to mold itself to his physiology. The bartender, a Shumarian with unusually dark skin and cybernetic implants covering one side of its face, glided over to him. "What can I provide?" The bartender communicated, its mental voice neutral but with an undercurrent of curiosity. "Information," Aiko replied, keeping his voice low. "I'm looking for someone." The bartender's remaining eye narrowed. "Information is our most valuable commodity. What do you offer in exchange?" Aiko placed a credit chip on the bar, the denomination high enough to attract attention but not so high as to be suspicious. "This should cover the initial consultation." "I'm looking for Nask." The bartender's cybernetic outward softly. "Nask does not receive visitors. Especially not visitors who smell of Earth technology." Aiko's hand moved instinctively toward his weapon, but he stopped himself. "I have a message from a mutual acquaintance. One who won't be making any more appointments." The bartender considered this for a moment, its expression unreadable. "The price for Nask's time is higher than this." "Much higher." "I'm prepared to pay," Aiko said, placing another credit chip on the bar. but I need to know that I'm not wasting my time. Can you confirm that Nask is available? The bartender collected the chips, its movements fluid and precise. Wait here. Do not speak to anyone. Do not touch anything. Some of our patrons are hungry. As the bartender moved away, Aiko scanned the room, his tactical display analyzing the various life forms and their potential threat levels. Most were below his threshold of concern, but two figures in a corner booth registered as unusually dangerous. One was a Shumarian with military-grade cybernetics, the other a being of indeterminate species wrapped in concealing robes. Before he could analyze them further, a figure approached his table. It was a female Shumarian, taller than most and with an unusual pattern of silver markings on her violet skin. Her eyes, a deep cyan color, seemed to look through Aiko rather than at him. The bartender said, "You're looking for Nask," she communicated, her mental voice different from the bartender's, more melodic, with a hint of something that felt like amusement. "That's a dangerous request to make in this establishment." "I'm a dangerous man to refuse," Aiko replied, his hand resting near his plasma pistol. The female Shumarian laughed, a sound that was both mental and audible. "Brave or foolish? Sometimes it's difficult to tell the difference. Nask doesn't meet with newcomers. But for the right price, I might be able to arrange an introduction." "What kind of price are we talking about?" The Shumarian leaned closer, her silver markings seeming to glow slightly. "Information. Something that would interest Nask. Something that would make the risk of meeting with a stranger worthwhile." Aiko considered his options. He couldn't reveal too much about his mission, but he needed to get to Nask, who according to the data files was the most powerful information broker on the planet. "I know about the experiments," Aiko said quietly. "The ones being conducted on humans. I know about Project Chimera." The Shumarian's expression changed instantly, her amusement replaced by sharp interest. "That's dangerous knowledge. How did you come by it?" "Let us just say I have a source who was directly involved," Aiko replied, thinking of Hale's message. "A source who is no longer in a position to be silenced." The Shumarian studied him for a long moment, her cyan eyes seeming to pierce through his disguise. "You're not just a messenger. You're the reason the security forces have been on high alert for the last cycle. The Earthling who has managed to evade Veyrax." Aiko didn't confirm or deny, but his hand tightened on his weapon. "Interesting," the Shumarian continued. "Very interesting. Follow me. And try not to draw any more attention than you already have." She led him toward a back corridor, her movements graceful and assured. As they passed the corner booth with the two dangerous-looking figures, Aiko felt a wave of psionic energy wash over him, subtle, probing, designed to lower his defenses. He activated his neural scrambler, the device creating a counter-frequency that disrupted the psychic assault. The robed figure in the booth shifted, its attention now focused on Aiko. He felt another, more powerful psionic probe, this one accompanied by a physical sensation like cold fingers tracing the edges of his consciousness. "Keep walking," the female Shumarian commanded, her mental voice sharp with urgency. "Do not engage. Do not respond." Aiko forced himself to continue forward, though every instinct screamed at him to neutralize the threat. The corridor ahead seemed to stretch and twist, the walls appearing to breathe as they passed. "The architecture is psionically active," his guide explained. "It responds to the thoughts and emotions of those who pass through. Focus on where you're going, not on what you're seeing." Aiko complied, centering his mind as he'd been trained to do during psychic resistance exercises. The corridor stabilized, resolving into a straightforward passage that ended at a door of solid black material that seemed to absorb the light around it. "Wait here," the Shumarian instructed. "I will announce you. Do not attempt to enter until summoned." She passed through the door without opening it, her form simply dissolving into the black surface. Aiko stood alone in the corridor, his senses on high alert. He could feel the presence of multiple security systems, some technological, some psionic, some that defied easy categorization. Minutes passed in silence. Aiko used the time to review what he knew about Nask from the data files. The information broker was ancient even by Shumarian standards, having operated in various forms for over 2,000 years. Nask had survived political upheavals, alien invasions, and even the Great Cleansing that had reshaped Shumarian society 5 centuries ago. The broker's longevity was attributed to a combination of advanced technology, psionic ability, and a network of informants that spanned the known galaxy. The door dissolved, revealing the female Shumarian. Nask will see you now. But be warned, Nask's methods of information gathering are unconventional. Aiko stepped through the doorway into a space that defied physics and perception. The room appeared to be a dome of crystalline material, with stars and galaxies visible through the transparent walls. In the center floated a being that was difficult to focus on, sometimes appearing as a cloud of light, sometimes as a network of interconnected crystals, sometimes as nothing at all. Earthling, a voice communicated directly in Aiko's mind, though it seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. You have traveled far to learn what you already know. Aiko forced himself to remain calm despite the disorienting environment. I've come to learn the truth. Not just about the experiments, but about why they're being conducted. Truth is a matter of perspective, Nask replied. From my perspective, the Shumarians are acting out of fear. From theirs, they're acting out of prudence. From yours, they're acting out of aggression. Which of these truths is the correct one? The one that helps me understand how to stop them, Aiko said firmly. Stop them. Nask's form shifted, resolving momentarily into a humanoid shape with multiple arms, each holding a different object. You cannot stop evolution, Earthling. You can only choose whether to adapt or be left behind. This isn't about evolution, Aiko countered. This is about control. The Shumarians don't want to understand human potential, they want to neutralize it. And why wouldn't they? Nask asked, its voice taking on a curious tone. Your species is chaotic, unpredictable, dangerous. You've barely achieved interstellar travel, yet you've already disrupted the balance of power in 3 different sectors. You create art that inspires revolution, music that incites rebellion, ideas that spread like viruses. From the Shumarian perspective, you're a plague waiting to happen. Then why study us? Why not just eliminate us? Because elimination has proven ineffective throughout history, Nask explained. Every attempt to destroy an idea only strengthens it. Every species driven to extinction is eventually replaced by something similar. The Shumarians learned this lesson long ago, at great cost. They prefer containment to destruction. Aiko considered this, his mind racing with implications. So they're not trying to destroy humanity, they're trying to contain it. To understand our potential so they can limit it. Precisely, Nask confirmed. But they've encountered a problem. Human potential isn't like other species' evolutionary traits. It's not predictable, not quantifiable. It seems to operate on principles that defy conventional understanding. Project Chimera, Aiko said. Dr. Chen's research. Ah, yes, Nask replied, its form shifting again. The good doctor was brilliant, but he missed something crucial. Something that changed everything about his research. What did he miss? Nask's form resolved into a perfect sphere of light, pulsing with a steady rhythm. The catalyst. The element that activates latent human potential. Chen believed it was environmental extreme conditions, near-death experiences, that sort of thing. But he was wrong. What is it then? Connection, Nask said simply. The specific resonance that occurs when certain human minds encounter certain alien technologies. A harmonic that unlocks abilities that should be impossible. Aiko felt a chill run down his spine. What kind of abilities? The kind that threaten the established order, Nask replied. The kind that could make a single human more dangerous than an entire fleet of warships. The kind that the Shumarians cannot predict, cannot control, cannot contain. The crystalline dome around them began to shift, the stars and galaxies outside replaced by images of humans displaying impossible abilities, moving objects with their minds, seeing across vast distances, even manipulating the fabric of spacetime itself. These are not simulations, Nask explained. These are recordings of actual events. Humans who have encountered the resonance and awakened to their potential. Each one was subsequently neutralized, but not before demonstrating capabilities that should not exist. Aiko watched in amazement as a human child on a frontier colony lifted a damaged shuttlecraft with her mind, saving her family from certain death. He saw a researcher on a deep space station predict with perfect accuracy the approach of a cosmic phenomenon that would have destroyed the facility. He witnessed a soldier on a hostile alien world manipulate time itself, dodging projectiles that should have been impossible to evade. How many? Aiko asked, his voice barely a whisper. How many humans have awakened like this? Officially. 27, Nask replied. Unofficially. Possibly hundreds. The Shumarians aren't the only ones who noticed this phenomenon. Other species are studying it too. Some want to harness it. Others want to destroy it. All fear it. And Project Chimera. What happened to Chin's research? Fragmented, Nask said. Scattered across multiple secure facilities. The Shumarians have most of it, but they're missing the crucial element, the catalyst itself. They can identify humans with the potential to awaken, but they can't force the awakening without understanding the resonance. Where is it now? The catalyst. Nask's form shifted again, this time resolving into a complex geometric pattern that hurt Aiko's eyes to look at directly. That is the question, isn't it? Chin realized what he discovered too late. He managed to hide his final research before the Shumarians took him. But he couldn't destroy it, too valuable, too important to the future of your species. Where? Aiko pressed, his urgency growing with each passing moment. Somewhere the Shumarians would never think to look, Nask replied. Somewhere even they fear to tread. The one place on this planet where their surveillance is incomplete. Their technology is fallible. Their control is absolute. The crystalline dome around them dissolved, revealing not the bar but a panoramic view of the city below. Aiko could see the intricate network of streets and platforms, the streams of traffic, the constant movement of beings going about their business. The Undercity, Nask communicated, its voice echoing in Aiko's mind. The original settlement, buried beneath the current metropolis. The place where the Shumarians' power began, and the one place they cannot fully control. That's where Chin hid his research. That's where you'll find what you're looking for. The view shifted, zooming in on a specific area of the city, a sector that appeared dilapidated and abandoned compared to the gleaming towers around it. Aiko could see the entrance to the Undercity, a massive circular opening in the ground, protected by energy barriers and patrolled by heavily armed guards. But be warned, Earthling, Nask continued, its form beginning to fade. The Undercity is not like the world above. Different rules apply there. Different powers hold sway. The Shumarians who rule the surface are not the ones who control what lies beneath. Aiko felt a sudden pressure in his mind, a psionic probe more powerful than any he'd encountered before. It was followed by a physical sensation, like cold fingers wrapping around his thoughts. And there is something else you should know, Nask added, its voice now barely a whisper. Vayrax is not the only one hunting you. The figure in the robes at the bar, that's a seeker. One of the ancients who serve the council. They don't just want to contain your species, they want to erase it completely. The pressure in Aiko's mind intensified, becoming painful. He activated his neural scrambler at maximum power, the device sending out a counter-frequency that disrupted the psychic assault. Nask's form flickered and dissolved completely. The Seeker knows you're here. Knows what you're looking for. Time is running out, Earthling. For you, and for your entire species. The crystalline room shattered into a million fragments of light, and Aiko found himself back in the corridor, the female Shumarian. Watching him with an expression of concern. You felt it too, she communicated, her mental voice urgent. The Seeker-S probe. We need to move. Now. Who are you? Aiko asked, his hand moving to his weapon. Why are you helping me? The Shumarian S silver markings began to glow more brightly. My name is Siraxi. And I'm helping you because I'm not just Shumarian. I'm also something your species would call human. The revelation hung in the air between them, impossible yet undeniable. Aiko studied Siraxi, his tactical display analyzing her biosignatures with renewed focus. The readings were confusing, predominantly Shumarian, but with trace elements that matched human DNA patterns in ways that shouldn't be possible. How? Aiko asked, his voice low and guarded. Hybridization between our species has been proven impossible. Genetic incompatibility, cellular rejection, neural pathway disruption. The official research is incomplete, Siraxi replied, her mental voice carrying an undercurrent of emotion that Aiko now recognized as pain. There are ways to combine our species that don't follow conventional genetic principles. Ways that the Shumarian Council has suppressed for centuries. She led him down a side corridor, this one narrower and more dimly lit than the main passage. The walls here seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, creating pockets of darkness that Aiko's enhanced vision struggled to penetrate. My mother was Shumarian, my father human, Siraxi explained as they walked. Not through natural means, but through a process that the Council considers heretical. A technique that bridges the gap between our species at a quantum level rather than a genetic one. Aiko considered this, his mind racing with implications. That's why you're helping me. You have a stake in what happens to humanity. More than that, Siraxi confirmed. I am what the Shumarians fear. A bridge between species. A living example of the very potential they're trying to contain. If they knew what I was, they would dissect me molecule by molecule to understand how I exist. They emerged into a small chamber filled with what appeared to be medical equipment, though of a design Aiko had never seen before. In the center of the room floated a holographic display showing a real-time map of the city, with multiple indicators tracking the movements of security forces. The Seeker will have reported your location by now, Siraxi said, her fingers moving across the holographic interface. Vayrax is coordinating the search. They're establishing a perimeter around this sector. Aiko studied the map, his tactical mind immediately identifying patterns and potential escape routes. They're focusing on the upper levels. They expect me to try to reach the spaceport. Which is exactly why you won T, Siraxi replied with a hint of admiration. Your reputation precedes you, Agent Aiko. The uncatchable spy. The man who escaped from caves or breeding pits. The operative who neutralized an entire Cygnian battle fleet with nothing but a stolen shuttle and a clever plan. Aiko raised an eyebrow. I'm flattered my exploits have reached this far. Your exploits are the reason the Council accelerated their containment plans, Siraxi said, her expression growing serious. You're not just an agent, Aiko. You're an example of human potential at its most dangerous. Unpredictable, adaptable, unstoppable. That's why they fear your species. That's why they fear you. The holographic map shifted, zooming in on the entrance to the Undercity. Aiko could see the security arrangements in detail: energy barriers, patrol routes, sensor arrays, even the positions of individual guards. The entrance is heavily fortified, Siraxi explained. But there are other ways in. Ways that aren't on any official schematic. Ways that even the Council doesn't know about. She manipulated the holographic display, causing a new set of passages to appear on the map. These were marked in red, indicating their unofficial status. The maintenance tunnels, Siraxi continued. Built when the city was first constructed, then abandoned when the Shumarians adopted their current energy-based infrastructure. They're not monitored, not patrolled, not even remembered by most. What's the catch? Aiko asked, knowing that nothing was ever that simple. They're not empty, Siraxi replied. The Undercity has its own ecosystem. Its own inhabitants. Species that were driven underground when the Shumarians consolidated power. Beings that have evolved in darkness and isolation for millennia. Aiko nodded slowly. And they're not friendly to outsiders. Let us just say they have a unique approach to visitors, Siraxi said with a mental smile. But they also have a vested interest in anything that threatens the Shumarian Council's power. And you, Earthling, are definitely a threat. A cross-dimensional portal opened in the wall of the chamber, swirling with colors that shouldn't exist in the normal spectrum of light. Aiko felt a wave of dizziness as his brain struggled to process the impossible geometry. Quantum tunnel, Siraxi explained. Short-range transportation. The energy signature will be masked by the city's ambient radiation. It will take us to the maintenance tunnel entrance, but we'll need to move quickly before the portal's residual energy is detected. Aiko stepped through the portal without hesitation, his training taking over as his body adapted to the disorienting transition. He found himself in a narrow corridor of rough-hewn rock, the air thick with the smell of ozone and something organic and vaguely unpleasant. Siraxi appeared beside him, the portal closing behind them with a soft implosion of air. This way. The tunnel entrance is approximately 200 meters ahead. As they moved through the corridor, Aiko's enhanced hearing picked up sounds from the walls around them, scratching, skittering, the occasional distant cry that seemed to come from multiple directions at once. His tactical display showed multiple life forms moving through the rock around them, though it couldn't identify their species. The tunnel dwellers, Siraxi explained, noticing Aiko's reaction. They've adapted to this environment in ways that would terrify a biologist. They don't just live in the rock, they've become part of it. They reached a massive circular doorway made of a metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The surface was covered in symbols that Aiko didn't recognize, arranged in patterns that seemed to shift when he tried to focus on them. The entrance, Siraxi said, placing her hand on a specific symbol. This will open it, but only for a few seconds. We need to be quick. The door dissolved into a cloud of particles that quickly dispersed, revealing a dark passage beyond. The air that flowed out was cold and carried a complex scent, mineral, organic, and something else that Aiko couldn't identify. After you, Aiko said, his plasma pistol in hand. Siraxi smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her face. Such a gentleman. But I believe the human expression is ladies first. I was taught to protect valuable assets, Aiko replied, his tactical display scanning the passage ahead. And right now, you're the most valuable asset I have. Flattery will get you everywhere, Earthling, Siraxi communicated as she stepped through the doorway. But don't think I've forgotten that your primary mission is still to retrieve Chen's research, not to protect me. I'm multitasking, Aiko replied as he followed her into the darkness. It's a human skill. The maintenance tunnel was exactly as advertised, dark, narrow, and apparently abandoned. The walls were covered in a strange bioluminescent moss that provided just enough light to navigate by, casting eerie shadows that seemed to move independently of their source. The moss is a symbiotic organism, Siraxi explained as they moved deeper into the tunnel. It feeds on the radiation from the city above and provides light for the creatures that live here. One of the Undercity's many unique ecosystems. Aiko's tactical display showed multiple life forms moving around them, though most appeared to be keeping their distance. What kind of creatures are we talking about? Varied, Siraxi replied. Some descended from species that existed on this planet before the Shumarians rose to power. Others arrived later. Through accidents, through failed experiments, through deliberate attempts to create biological weapons. Aiko felt a wave of cold air wash over him, accompanied by a sound like whispering in a language he couldn't understand. His neural scrambler activated automatically, countering a psionic probe that was subtle enough that he might have missed it if not for the device's automatic defenses. They're testing us, Siraxi said, her mental voice tense. The tunnel dwellers are curious about newcomers. Especially newcomers who carry the scent of the surface world. The whispering intensified, coming from multiple directions now. Aiko could see movement in the shadows at the edge of his vision, forms that seemed to dissolve when he looked directly at them. They're psionic. Aiko asked, his weapon ready. Not exactly, Siraxi replied. More like empathic. They sense emotions, intentions. They communicate through feelings rather than thoughts or words. Aiko centered his mind, using the meditation techniques he learned for psychic resistance. He focused on calm, on purpose, on the mission objective rather than the fear or aggression that might attract unwanted attention. The whispering subsided, replaced by a sound like soft footfalls in the distance. Aiko's tactical display showed multiple life forms approaching, their biosignatures unlike anything in his database. Company S coming, Siraxi communicated, her hand moving to a weapon of her own, a device that looked like a crystalline pistol. And they don't sound friendly. Figures began to emerge from the shadows ahead, tall and slender, with skin that seemed to blend with the darkness around them. Their faces were elongated, with large eyes that reflected the bioluminescent moss with an eerie green light. They moved with a fluid grace that was both beautiful and terrifying. The Cathar, Siraxi whispered, though the sound carried clearly in the tunnel. Or what's left of them. The original inhabitants of this planet, driven underground when the Shumarians arrived. Aiko recognized the species name from HID intelligence reports. The Cathar were an insectoid race known for their hive mind and their hostility toward outsiders. But these creatures were different from the ones described in the reports, smaller, more agile, their carapaces adapted to darkness rather than the bright light of their native environment. They've evolved, Siraxi explained, as if reading his thoughts. Changed to survive in this environment. They're not the same species that the Shumarians defeated all those centuries ago. The Cathar spread out in a semicircle, blocking their path forward. Their large eyes blinked in.